Birchin Edge, Stanage Popular, Burbage North, The Roaches, Twistleton Scar, Tribor Quarry, Trobarrow Quarry, Baggy Point. From July 2024 to November 2024, we have filmed at 8 venues and posted more than 100 videos. Now it's time to meet the climbers. What have we got planned for this weekend then?
We're going to do some sport climbing.
We are.
Trevor.
My local crag.
Trevor Quarry. What is this sports climbing like?
Well, everything you've filmed so far has been trad climbing. I suppose the main difference is the way the climb's protected.
Yep, you don't have to take as much gear with you.
Mm-hmm. Isn't that cheating?
If you're a trad person of old, then yeah, it could be called cheating. It's fairly low risk.
Is it?
Yeah, but the climbs tend to be a little bit harder, don't they?
I would say it's not low risk because, and the main difference is that on trad climb we put the protection in ourselves into cracks and holes and tapes round rock. On sport climbing they're bolted, and all we have to do is to clip the rope into the bolts as we go up. And I think it's safer to the extent that you can try harder, you can do harder climbs and feel safe about falling off them.
Yeah, you always know how far you're going to fall.
Yeah.
And if the bolts are in good nick, they shouldn't rip or anything.
So who checks these bolts are in good nick?
Well, there's usually an area. There are people in the area who keep an eye on the safety. And sometimes, like the BMC at Horseshoe Quarry, they put the bolts in and they maintain them. They maintain the safety of the crag and things like that. And then there's usually a local group of climbers who have maybe put up routes and put the bolts there in the first place and keep an eye on it.
So
you can generally tell, I think, how old the bolts are and whether it's an element of risk there.
There's no signs or anything on the climb?
No, you might... No, nothing on the routes
like
at all.
So
you might find something in the guidebook that will tell you whether or not that's been re-bolted and how often.
So they put bolts in because there's no handholds or nothing to work with, or...
Oh, well, there's handholds, yeah. I mean, it goes back a way. I mean, in this country, it's known that in the UK, trad climbing has been the main ethos around climbing. And I remember way back when there was a lot of difficulty really around sport climbing and trad climbing. It got to the extent in Cornwall where people putting bolts into the sea cliffs in Cornwall, and trad climbers were chopping the bolts off and saying we're not having bolts on our sea cliffs. And there was a huge meeting, the BMC held a huge meeting at the Count House, which are based down, they have down there, and it was voted that there should be no bolts in Cornwall apart from the quarried rock on Bodmin Moor, and that's how it's been since. There aren't bolted climbs in Cornwall. But over time, it was sort of, because there was this huge difference between British climbing and climbing elsewhere on the continent. The sport climbing ethos, where climbs were protected with bolts, or originally with pegs. I remember instructing in the Pyrenees, and everything involved banging pegs into cracks with a hammer and then taking them out again afterwards. You just carried a whole load of pegs around with you. And that later became bolts, which were permanently in place. But it took quite a while for that to catch on over here, really.
I think also these days there's almost a natural progression from youngsters in particular who their first climb is in a climbing wall, and within there you've got bouldering routes, but you also have bolted routes. And I guess if you learn your climbing there, the next thing to do is go out and maybe try bolted routes. on real rock.
Yeah. Well, I noticed in the Olympics this year they were kind of doing both, weren't they? But on a climbing wall. Is that, or was that both?
Well,
I don't think there was any trad, was there?
No, the previous Olympics was like a triathlon. The Olympic Committee, International Olympic Committee, came up with a way of introducing climbing into the Olympics, which was to have 3 different types of climbing: speed climbing, bouldering, and sport climbing, as 3 strands of a triathlon. Which a lot of the climbing, a lot of climbers thought, how the hell are they going to do that? Because people who go sport climbing don't tend to be speed climbers. In fact, they may not even do a lot of bouldering. Boulderers tend to stick to bouldering and do over the others, and speed climbers just do speed climbing. And speed climbing is used to be focused on places like Russia, very big in Russia, and we didn't even have a speed climbing wall in this country. I think we had 1 or 2 before, when that announcement was made. We've got a lot more now. But they had to come up with an artificial way of pulling the scoring on them together, so that it didn't favour one way or the other.
And I think it was more interesting.
It was certainly interesting, yeah. But that only lasted for 1 Olympics, and in the recent Olympics, in the Paris Olympics, I think it was recognised in advance that speed climbing is a totally different sport entirely. I mean, sprint climbing, short sprint up a wall, touching the wall as little as possible.
And they're top roped as well, aren't they?
And it's a self belay
system.
So it takes us but the bouldering and sport climbing were combined as a duathlon, effectively.
So do you see that as the sort of intro for young climbers these days, more coming in at the sport climbing and bouldering end?
Oh, definitely.
Yeah, I think we try in our club. We try to promote getting youngsters out of the climbing walls and out onto real rock. But our focus is on trad for those people. For climbers coming out of climbing gyms, which they're seen as very much so. I mean, in the States they call them climbing gyms, and they're beginning to be seen as that here. Some people just see it as that. You spend an evening at the climbing wall. It keeps you fit. It's a good social environment, and a lot of them never go outside at all. But when they go outside, they see people doing trad climbing, and they think maybe, well, I'd like to have a go at that, but where do I start? Nobody's ever shown me how to do that.
Yeah, of course you're members of the BMS CMC, and they kind of, what do they look after mainly? Is it trad or?
Trad.
Very definitely trad.
Almost definitely trad.
So no, when we were down on Baggy Point, we met somebody who wanted to. It was a bouldering, wasn't he? Bouldering guy. And he was interested in getting into trad.
Yeah.
Yeah, but he was looking for a way through.
Yeah. There aren't that many clubs like BMS CMC around that do cover all disciplines, but we definitely favour trad, and we're definitely trying to get particularly young climbers off the plastic and onto the rock. I mean, you talk about the different styles of climbing. Going way back, I don't recall there were any climbing walls when I started with you.
No.
And we started out top roping on sandstone down in Kent.
Yeah. So how did you develop from that? Because I remember doing that when I was 17, down in Kent on balls, rocks, and and in those days we just had a lump of hemp rope and we tied it around our waists.
And that's exactly how we started, isn't it, Big Brother? The problem being, at that age, Andrew was about as tall as he is now, and I was 14. So all that happened is when Andrew fell, I just went straight up the rock. But you devised a cunning scheme, didn't you, to stop that happening on particularly difficult rocks?
Yeah, I remember tying it to a lamppost.
Yes.
Do you find that works these days?
Well, it certainly incentivised me.
You've come quite a long way since then, haven't you?
Yeah, I think so.
I always remember Andrew being sort of an alpine type of guy. And how did you get into
I started off on the sandstone on the Kent-Sussex border. I mean, actually, the first climbing I did was in Scotland in the Cairngorms, because I hadn't done any climbing or very much outdoor stuff until I became a teacher, and then I started teaching at a school in Kent that had a big tradition of mountaineering and climbing and Duke of Edinburgh Awards, outdoor pursuits. And the guy who was running all of that sort of took me under his wing, really, and I got into it big time for the first year of teaching, and then he left and got a job somewhere else, and I ended up in charge of it all with no qualifications and very little experience. So I had to learn very quickly, really, but within 4 or 5 years I was taking trips abroad, and I was running the climbing club, and we were taking kids lead climbing. And
you were qualified by that point, weren't you?
Not always. But we didn't.
Those were the days.
So
qualified by experience.
We are talking about nearly 50 years ago, and health and safety haven't been invented yet.
Really. And we were still hemp ropes around the waist.
Yeah.
And bowline around the waist for the
yeah, absolutely.
And and you knew that if you fell off and hung on that for a minute or two, then you were going to be in trouble. And but even on long mountain climbs, it was a while before we used harnesses, wasn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, so come on. So you just completed your 70 from 70.
Yeah,
and 61 at 61. How was that for you?
It was ridiculous.
It was entertaining, I felt.
I've just got my big toenails back now.
Sorry about that.
What are your memories of those climbs?
Well, it's funny looking at the videos, because I think, I can't remember doing that climb.
No. Well, I can't remember doing the one we did last week. So.
Yeah. Sometimes that's an advantage as you get older, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yes, I seem to remember the weather wasn't particularly good for most of it.
It was scheduled for 5 days, but day one was a complete...
It was 2 climbs on day one.
Yeah.
That was. It wasn't a lot better on day 2, I think.
Well, we managed 8 on day 2, I think. And at that stage I thought, well, this is not going to work, it's not going to happen. But Jim, bless him, came up with this. The weather was going to be better, and he said, right, we can do 30 tomorrow. Got up early and cracked on with it.
Mm-hmm.
But I just remember doing climb 29 and thinking, I can't lift my arms above my head. But that changed the whole.
Yeah, we were back on track then, weren't we? And then the last day was just epic, wasn't it?
Yeah, because that was supposed to be good weather for most of the day, but it started raining much earlier than expected.
The rest of the club members who were up on that trip all came out to support us after they'd had a cooked breakfast, and at first sign of rain, which was just before lunch, they all buggered off to the pub. So
that's what we like to hear.
We just kept on going, didn't we?
We did, yeah. So climbing in the rain. It's a good job it was grit, really, because you can just about get away with that.
Yeah, we've had some comments about climbing on grit in the rain. What's your opinion on that?
Well, I try to avoid it.
It's okay most of the time, and you just just lower your grade you're climbing.
We couldn't have got any lower on some of those climbs, could we?
Yeah, but I mean, I remember particularly Heaven Crack at Stanage in the rain.
In the rain, that was awesome.
Which that stands out as an experience, really, because I've only ever climbed that in lovely dry weather. Take people up it and they think it's awesome, and actually doing it in pouring rain was a memorable experience, really.
So we just cracked on, didn't we, on that last day, and finished about 5 o'clock, was it?
Yeah. We started really early on that day, though, didn't we?
We
were out on the rocks on 7.
Well, we had to. There was going to be any chance to complete it.
Yes, I remember missing my breakfast in my rather nice pub.
Yep. Well, that's the sort of commitment you have to.
That's the commitment you have to have. Isn't it?
What's it Jim calls it? Alpine start.
Definitely.
So what's the most memorable climbs you've made?
Oh, there's been some very scary ones, isn't there?
I think our most memorable one together was Parlay.
Yeah, definitely. Costa Blanca.
In the Costa Blanca,
Mm.
which, I mean, I'd done it twice
Twice
before. And for me, it's an amazing climb. The first time I did it with Rich Mayfield, who took me up it. And it was, he'd done the first descent. This is climbing out of a sea cave through a hole in the roof. You have to abseil down through the hole in the roof to get to the bottom, and then you climb up the side of the cave to get out at the top.
Wow.
It's a straight 60-metre abseil, straight down,
Yeah.
almost into the sea. Amazing.
And then I think a year or two later, I did it with tree surgeon Dave.
Yep.
And that was epic. And then you saw that.
Mm.
And you wanted to do it, so then we went back and did it.
Yeah, and everybody
Next
else
year.
on that day bottled it, didn't they? So I had no choice.
So yeah, and it's just such a fantastic setting, right by the sea, in the cave.
Mhm. Is that where we're planning to go next year?
Yes, we're going to go there
It's our trip.
in the
isn't it?
autumn next year. Yeah,
Oh, brilliant.
and that's a sport climb.
Yeah.
So that's a bolted climb, and I think some of the people in the club will mainly want to climb trad and not climb a lot of sport, but we're easy
Pretty
overload.
flexible.
We quite like sport climbing as well.
Yeah. It tends to be, steeper and a harder grade
Yeah.
than we would climb trad.
Mm.
Yeah.
But-
And you do fall off,
Yep.
It's a very popular video.
The sloth. Yeah, no, we're talking about falling off sport. It's easier to fall off sport because
Yeah.
you're fairly sure that you're not going to deck out.
Mm.
Well, I think that highlights the difference in approach, between sport and trad climbing, and I think it's where trad climbing has benefited in a way, because it's sort of almost taken for granted on a sport climb that you're not going to do it on your first. If you're trying hard, it's quite likely you're not going to do it on your first attempt. You might not even do it on your second attempt, and so you get this idea of having a project climb. The climb that you're going to keep going at,
Mhm.
and almost do it almost like gymnastics. Really, you're going to try and doing moves in different ways until you can find the right way of doing
Mhm.
it, and then you'll do a ground up ascent
Mm.
and not fall off.
So is that developing a climb, is it?
Well, that is the ways that a lot of new routes are done.
Mm.
That whole idea of red pointing a climb, that you work it out from the bottom upwards.
Yep.
Sometimes you'll come down from the top hanging on a rope and practice moves until you're confident that you can do it all the way out. And the aim always is to do a ground up ascent.
Yeah.
And I think I don't feel really precious about trad climbing and doing a perfect ascent every time.
No.
I want to enjoy climbing and do it in the best way I can.
Yep.
And that's why I do it.
Yeah, I think we always pick climbs that we know are fairly within our ability.
Mhm.
I don't want to go and fall off anything.
Yeah.
But you've done advanced climbing courses and
I've done one. We did one together 2 years ago, didn't we?
Yeah, I did the performance climbing course at Plazzy Brennan, I suppose about 10 years ago, and just talked about it a lot because it was so good. And then I thought, oh, that's the hardest I'm ever going to climb. And then Keith decided he wanted to do it, but only if I did it with him. I thought, oh God.
So what level is that climbing to?
We were trying to push. Andrew's climbed at E in the past. I've never climbed anything more than HVS, I think.
Mm-hmm.
So it was about trying to push our ability beyond sort of VS, HVS,
Mm-hmm.
maybe into E territory.
So to do the course, you have to be steady at VS, really, confidence at leading VS, and then it will take you from that point and teach you the skills. I think that's the main thing. It's not about getting you to climb at that level, it's about making sure that you're competent and confident and skilled to teach, to climb at that level. And certainly you just learn an enormous amount.
Oh yeah, because it is, for us it was us climbers and one dedicated instructor who was very good, and he worked out pretty early on what we needed to be climbing in order to push ourselves that little bit further. You talk about favourite climbs. There was the Fool's Gold is one that will stick in my memory for a very long time, even though it was top roped. It's the one I would like to go back and lead. Really good climb.
Yeah. And that's in Snowdon, is it? Snowdon?
It's in the slate quarries
Slate.
above
Bus stop quarry.
Bus stop quarry. Yeah. that was an awesome route
Yeah, and you climbed it really well.
on a top rope.
No confidence. Yeah.
But yeah, we've got others that stick in the memory. That normally because we got ourselves into a bit of bother, isn't it?
Well, what are you thinking of?
Well, Avon Gorge.
It's very easy to get into bother at Avon Gorge.
Yeah, particularly when the climb that you're on, you're informed halfway out that the council came and blew that one off a week before. And that's why we're having difficulty.
Yeah, because it's not there anymore.
You can't find this route because it's not there anymore.
Yeah.
And that ended with a pretty epic abseil as well, didn't it? Because it was a beautiful day, I remember. And then it started getting dark and cold and snowing.
Yeah.
And we couldn't go up. And we knew it would take 2 abseils to get down, didn't we?
Yeah.
But we didn't know where the rope was going to end up.
Yeah. That's it. Yeah. Epic.
So do you prefer climbing routes that you climbed before, or I know certainly Andrew, you've said it sometimes.
Well,
I don't want to watch this climb because I want to climb it on site. Is that right?
Yeah.
What you got to remember with Andrew is he's climbed most of them before anyway. He's been around so long.
Well, I can't remember. I mean, it's quite. I got in a few years ago with people who were. I've got friends who are keen to climb classic rock climbs. These are the coffee table books that came out. So classic rock climbs go up to VS, really. And I've done a lot of those, a lot of the English and Welsh ones certainly back in the day. But I thought, well, if I'm going to do them, I can't remember doing them. I'm going to start afresh. So what I've been doing is just picking them off again, really, with other people. So when we did that abortive walk up Penny Ghent,
I remember it well.
To do red pencil on Penny Ghent. I mean, I've soloed that twice in the past, and I thought, yeah, but I can't really remember much about it. And so I was looking forward to doing that one again. So that's got to go on the list, I think.
We might have to leave a bit earlier next time.
The reason we laugh at this one is because we were told it took 30 minutes to get to Penny Ghent from the car park. I think about an hour and a half later we were still walking towards Penny Ghent. And then when we got up there it was so windy we came back down again.
That's true.
So,
and we didn't have head torches, so the chances were we would have struggled to get back down in the dark.
Just getting dark, wasn't it?
Oh, and you just climbed...
just climbed Genie as well.
Genie.
And now double denim.
Yeah,
Whose idea was
that was a fun climb, wasn't it?
Yeah, that was good. Yeah, and you talk about climbing routes that we think we can get up. I mean, I wasn't entirely confident of getting up Gene. You know, and the thing you were saying about on-site climbing, of that, I mean, I really did want to do that as an on-site lead. I didn't want to know how it was, but you know, obviously you end up like sort of having a rough idea where the crux is and things like that. But and I think it's one thing about the videos. I mean, if you watch that Genie video, there's a lot of information on there really about how to do the climb.
Or how not to do it.
Or how not to do the climb in some cases. Yeah, but I mean, you really get an idea of you know, what sort of holds you're going for, and the nature of the jamming that takes place.
Mm-hmm.
You know, what Keith calls the Garmin.
The Garmin hand jam. Garmin technique.
Turning your hand round in a way.
So your watch holds you on.
If it works, don't knock it.
So I like watching climbing videos, but I've got a tendency, if I know I'm going for a climb, I don't really want to watch a video of it beforehand, because I want to experience it as if it's new, and that is the case with some that I've already done, because I can't remember. Yeah, I used to say with Smokey Dave and with Che, I used to say, because Che's got a very good memory for these things, I said, Che, have I done this before? He said, yes, Andrew. Oh, right.
Whereas I Google everything. Whenever Andrew says, let's go and do this route, I Google it and get as much beta as possible. Like tomorrow, what's the climb that you want to do tomorrow?
Borderline.
Yeah.
Which sport climb, 6A plus sport climb 3-star route, which I'd really like to do.
Does it have to have stars?
Borderline maniac, I think.
And you sent me a video of somebody just doing the top bit, and fortunately there's unfortunately it doesn't really give you much information. You're looking straight down on it, so but I thought, it's quite crimpy at the top.
As long as you can use a thumb and a forefinger.
Forearm is forearm.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay.
Yeah. Great. Right, I think we can leave it there for now. Thank you very much.